When I was a child, apples were a really big part of my life. I really liked apples, and I still do. There were a lot of apple orchards around Caledon where I grew up. And there's this big hill south of Caledon Village that people used to call the Caledon Mountain. It's not really a mountain, I guess it's actually the top of the Niagara Escarpment, and there's a hill, Highway 10 goes down this hill. It's a fairly long hill. It's probably 3 or 4 kilometers to 2 miles long down this hill. And there were apple orchards around there, and there was a place where you could buy apples, and I think there was like an apple salesperson there, and I think his name was Eagles. His last name was Eagles, and my mother used to buy apples by the bushel. So a bushel basket is I guess a bushel is about this. It's a basket about this big around and this high. They were made out of wood, sort of weaved. I don't know if they exist anymore. They must still exist. But she used to buy apples by the bushel. So there'd be a lot of apples in a bushel of apples. There'd be, I don't know how many, 100, maybe more. But she used to buy these by the bushel because I would eat apples just nonstop when I was a kid. I would eat apples so much that they had to limit my intake, and I had a 10 apple a day limit. And I don't know how exactly they enforced that 10 apple limit, but it was in place in the summer. When I was at home in the summer on summer vacation, I would just eat apples nonstop, and I was limited to 10 apples per day. I think I couldn't get my full dose of apples during the school year, except on weekends, because I was at school. But I would take 4 or 5 apples to school, and I'd eat them for lunch and a break. And so I just loved apples. There were also apples. There's also apple trees around on this farm. They're wild apples though. But they're good. They're really good. There's apples like there's some over there, and there's some over there. There's a few along here, this fence, and then there's at the house there was apple trees as well. None of them were great apples, but I loved them, and I would supplement my legal quota of apples in the summer with apples off the trees. At least once the apples were on the trees. So my mother had no way to control that. I could just walk back here and eat apples as much as I wanted. The downside of eating the wild apples at the farm was that they often would have a worm in them, which is really strange. Every single apple would have 1 worm in it. But that didn't stop me. You can eat round worms. And a worm's not going to kill you if you eat it. And so it was, I needed to eat apples, and I had an apple problem, and I needed to eat apples, and worms were not going to stop me. So I had a very unusual relationship with apples when I was a child, and I love apples to this day. And although apples are my favorite food, I'm currently holding a pear, and they're pretty good too, and I'm going to eat that now.